YouTube. It's me, Blackhead from Blackhead Gaming Studios, and today, for the Christmas weekend special, I'll be doing updates on some of my previous decks, the Blue Eyes, the Trickstars, and the Dark Magicians specifically, along with some new ones throughout the week. Today, I thought I'd give you guys an update on how on my new Trickstar build, and today I'll be doing the Trickstar Windwitch build. So hopefully you guys enjoy, and I'll throw in some tips and strategies as I go. So anyway, let's get to it. Starting off with our monsters, we got our 3 Trickstar Candinas. Just get this third one out. There we go. Okay, so basically what you do with this is that when you normal summon her, you can add any Trickstar monster Trickstar card, from your deck to your hand, and you can inflict 200 points damage each time your opponent activates a spell or trap. But you mainly need her for the searching ability. Then we got our 3 Trickstar Licorice, and possibly the best card in this deck. If not, it is the best card in this deck actually, because basically she inflicts 200 points for each card your opponent adds to his hand, including when they draw one too, and then you can quick effect reveal her and target one Trickstar monster you control and special summon it. Now apparently you can do this. I didn't know this was actually legal. If you have, let's say you happen to have 2 of these and a Candina. You summon your Candina and then you chain by revealing both of these. You can actually target the one Candina and they both get special summoned. I did not know that was a thing. So anyway, moving on. We got 2 Trickstar Narcissus. And what she does is that she summons herself to the field whenever your opponent takes effect damage. And it doesn't have to be from a Trickstar specifically. And she inflicts 200 points of damage whenever your opponent activates, let's say, a hand trap or a graveyard effect. That's how her effect works. And then we only have the one Trickstar Lilybell, as it should be. Trickstar Lilybell, I used to run this at 3, which wasn't too bad, but unfortunately it did clunk up the deck. And again, the deck was still too new, so I didn't know what combos to work with. But anyway, whenever you add her whenever she's added to your hand, except by drawing, you can special summon it to the field. And she's able to attack directly even if your opponent has a field full of monsters. And whenever she inflicts battle damage, you can add a Trickstar monster from your deck to your hand. Or I'm sorry, not from your deck, from your graveyard to your hand. Disregard on that one. Alright, moving on to the Windwitches. We got Windwitch Ice Spell. And basically what you do is this. As long as you control no monsters, you can special summon her directly to the field and special summon a Windwitch from your deck. And you can also inflict 500 points of damage to your opponent. And then we have 2 Glass Spells. This is the monster you mainly want to special summon through the effect of Ice Spell. Whenever this monster is normal or special summoned, you can add a Windwitch monster except Glass Spell to your hand. And then but by the way, there's a weakness to these Windwitches. Windwitch Ice Spell restricts you to only special summon from the extra deck with wind monsters. You cannot special summon anything else. And Windwitch Glass Spell prevents you from special summoning anything except wind monsters. But anyway, continuing on, we got the 1 Windwitch Snowbell. When this monster is used as synchro material for a wind attribute monster, that monster cannot be destroyed by card effects. So it's really interesting to have, and it actually works for this deck because their mechanics are actually very similar. Now for the remaining monsters, it's going to be mainly hand traps from here on out. We got 1, 2, and 3 Honest. Solely because the Trickstars aren't very strong in general, but they are light attribute monsters. In which case you can then discard Honest anytime during the damage calculation and give your Trickstars a temporary power boost for the duration of the turn. Next up we got 1 Honey Wada. You're probably wondering what the hell is this for? I just use this for mirror matches against other Trickstar players. If I happen to top deck it, I discard it immediately when my turn starts. This basically what this does is it turns all effect damage to 0 for the whole turn, which is really good against other Trickstar players. Unfortunately, I only have 1 Jolton Lockbird, but I am in process of getting myself a second one. Plus, there's a reprint coming out in March, supposedly, in the Legendary Collection's Kaiba's World. But basically, you combo this with Trickstar Reincarnation, you banish your opponent's hand and then discard this immediately after, and your opponent cannot draw any more cards. And it's good against players, who do a lot of searching, so you can just draw and lockbird them. That can't add any cards to their hand, even from drawing. So like Pot of Desires is useless against this thing. Next up, we got the one Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. Now it's not too great since it's the weakest of the Ghost sisters, but really comes in handy against like spells that that can be a bit of a pain, like that Pendulum Grab from Pen Magicians, or that or Pendulum Switch and stuff like that. Only use this towards field and continuous spells and traps. Of course, there's some monster effects, like if you want to bait out your opponent, then use it for that purpose too. Alright, that takes care of all of our monsters. Now let's move on to the spells and traps. For the first of our spells, we got my 3 Trickstar Light Stage. Upon activation, you can add 1 Trickstar monster from your deck to your hand, and once per turn, you can target 1 set spell or trap on your opponent's side of the field and lock it in place. And at the end of the turn, they either have to activate it or just send it straight to the graveyard. This does not destroy, so that's actually a really good card to play. Then we got 2 Terraforming. I did used to play 3, but unfortunately it's not as needed anymore because Trickstar Candina can't search out Trickstar Light Stage, which is the reason why I only draw 2 of these. And plus, I always somehow at least draw 1 of these on my first hand anyway. Next up, we got Twin Twisters, which I'm thinking about actually replacing with Cosmic Cyclones, but I kind of like this a little bit better because it pops 2 spells and traps. But you do have to pay for costs, but sometimes I usually like to get some of my Trickstar monsters into graveyard, that way I can recycle them later for mid-game or late game with Trickstar Lilybell. So this card really does come in handy. Next up, this is another card I used to play at 3, but it's Chain Summoning. I don't play it at 3 anymore because out of a lot of the games I've played, especially in tournaments, I've only managed to pull out the Chain Summoning method at least 20 times out of 100 duels I've actually played with this deck. So I'm actually thinking about replacing it with something a little bit better, which I will get to in just a moment. Next up, we got the 1 Regeki, which is always great, and it's actually a little bit better in Trickstars than Darkhold because you don't want to destroy your own monsters, you just want to mainly get rid of your opponent's side. Then we got Pot of Desires. I only run this at 1 only because I don't like to banish like that many cards just to get the ones I might need later, or if I end up banishing everything I need. But this is the card I actually want to reveal that I think is a little bit better than Chain Summoning solely because of what it does, which is Arrival Rivals. Basically, during the battle phase, immediately after this card resolves, you can normal summon 1 monster, and you can activate 1 Arrival Rivals once per turn. So this basically acts as a quick play double summon, which is really good, considering that you want to try to fill up your board as quickly as you possibly can with Trickstars and keep inflicting burn damage to them. But yeah, when I saw this, it's like, oh, that's actually pretty interesting. So you can like just technically add an additional normal summon in place of your turn. So, next up we got, and what's also interesting is that you can also do it during your opponent's turn. You can normal summon 1 monster during his turn. So that's why I'm thinking, like, I think Arrival Rivals will be a better version than Chain Summoning. Alright, lastly we're going up to our traps, and we have our 3 Trickstar Reincarnations. This is actually the big money card of the deck, but it's actually gone a little bit cheaper as it gone. I managed to pull off 2 of these, but I ended up having to buy the 3rd, unfortunately, but it wasn't too bad. I had a pretty solid deal with it. But this is the card you use to banish your opponent's entire hand, and then you can also banish it later on to revive one of your Trickstar monsters. And your opponent does have to draw the same number of cards. Now, in case of this card ever does get hit in the January ban list, I do have a pretty good alternative that works almost as good, which is Disturbance Strategy. Your opponent has to shuffle back his entire hand and draw the same number of cards, so you could still use this card with the Draw and Lockbird method, which is pretty good. It's really solid, and it keeps the consistency of burning damage. Alright, next up we got our 2 Solemn Strikes, which you just pay 1,500 points to negate a special summon. So this rarely works against Pendulum Summons or anything from the extra deck, and also negates and monster effects, so which is really great. And then of course the 1 Solemn Warning negates any summon, but you gotta pay 2,000 life points to do it. Alright, now that the traps are done, let's move on to the extra deck. We've got 2 Trickstar Holly Angels. Each time a Trickstar monster is summoned to her link points, you can inflict 200 points of damage. And each time a Trickstar monster inflicts effect damage, she gains 200 points of attack points, including herself, whenever she does her own burn damage. And also, Trickstar monsters on her link points cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Next up, we got Trickstar Blackhead Bat. Now, this one's pretty interesting. She's basically the exact opposite of Holly Angel. And what she does is that each time a monster this card points to is destroyed by battle or a card effect and sent to the graveyard, inflict 200 points of damage. And each time a Trickstar monster, or each time your opponent takes damage by a Trickstar monster, your opponent's monsters lose 200 attack points. Let me let the camera... Okay, and just note that these are only like until the end of the turn effects. We got one Fairy Cheer Girl, just get a little extra draw power. And of course the new big time rank 4 monster, Baguska. Put him in defense mode, and all monsters have to go in defense mode and their effects are negated. But it's a good way to stall for some time, And then we got our one Tornado Dragon. Just recently pulled this from just a random Maximum Crisis that I saw at a Target. So it was just like lucky, lucky, lucky. Just pop spells and traps. Alright, next up we got the new super rare Windwitch Winterbell. Target one Windwitch monster in your graveyard and inflict 200 points of damage based on its level. You usually go for a glass spell for that effect. Then we got Crystal Wings Synchro Dragon. Negates one monster effect per turn, and again, if you use Snowbell as synchro material for it, it cannot be destroyed by card effects. And he basically honors himself whenever he battles a level 5 or higher monster. Now, this is a card most people don't really use, but I just like its effect in general. After you activate a field spell, or whenever a field spell activates, you can just draw one card. And then, once per turn, you can target one face-up attack monster on the field, destroy that target, then... but in order to do that, there has to be a face-up field spell to resolve this effect. But again, like I said, I just like draw power in this deck, and that's how you should run it. Next up, we got the one Clear Wing Synchro Dragon. Just a weaker version of the Crystal Wing, but pretty much almost does the exact same thing. But he can only negate level 5 and higher monsters, and can only negate a monster effect that targets him. Next up, we got one Black Rose Dragon. More of a last resort type of deal. You basically just want to nuke the field, depending on what you're up against. And lastly, not lastly, we still got two more, my fault. We got Stardust Dragon, which is just an alternative in case my plan to get Crystal Wing out failed on me. I at least have a backup monster that I could use for the Windwitches. And finally, and this is for sure the last card, it's Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Spirit. Now, it is possible to pull him off in this deck, it's just a really rare occurrence, so don't rely on him too much, but if you know how to do it, there are plenty of monsters you can use as materials to bring them out. Alright. Anyway, that's all I got to share with my Trickstars. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you on the next one.